Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face and looked at the metal patch he had just welded onto the hull of his ship. The Starbound was not much to look at, but it kept them alive in the cold darkness of space. He preferred working with his hands rather than sitting in the captain's chair, giving orders to his small crew. Lisa Parker called out from the bridge that 3 distress signals were coming through the communication system at the same time. Jake set down his welding torch and walked slowly to the bridge where his pilot was pointing at the screen, showing 3 different locations marked in red pen. Taylor looked up from the engine readouts and shook his head. The engineer had been with Jake for 2 years now and knew that look on his captain's face. Amy Stone finished checking the medical supplies and joined them on the bridge. The 4 of them had been together since Jake lost his home colony to alien raiders 5 years ago. The first distress signal came from a Valorian Empire warship that had suffered engine damage during a patrol mission. The proud bird-like aliens were known for their honor codes and military traditions. Their ship was drifting near a dangerous asteroid field with life support failing. The second signal belonged to a Nexari Federation science vessel that had been studying a dying star when their shields failed. The small gray aliens with large black eyes were brilliant with technology, but their ship was now caught in the star's gravity well. They had maybe 6 hours before being pulled into the burning surface. The third distress call was from a Kethran, warrior clan ship that had been ambushed by pirates near the outer rim. The large reptilian aliens were fierce fighters, but their weapons systems were damaged, and they were outnumbered 3-1. The pirates were closing in for the final attack. Lisa looked at Jake and asked which one they should help first. Most salvage captains would choose based on which rescue might pay the most credits. The Valorians had honor but little money. The Nexari had advanced technology to trade. The Kethrans might offer valuable weapons or information about pirate movements. Jake studied the 3 locations on the star map and began calculating distances and travel times. Ben watched him work and realized what his captain was thinking. Jake was not choosing between the 3 ships. He was planning a route to save all of them. The route Jake planned would take them first to the Kethran ship, since the pirate attack was happening right now. They could provide cover fire while the warriors repaired their weapons. Then they would swing by the Valorian ship and help them get clear of the asteroid field. Finally, they would reach the Nexari vessel just in time to pull them away from the dying star. Lisa pointed out that this plan would put them in danger at each stop with no guarantee of payment from any of the 3 species. Jake just nodded and told her to set course for the Kethran ship. He went back to his welding without explaining his decision. The battle with the pirates was quick and brutal. Jake used the Starbound's mining lasers to disable 2 pirate ships while the Kethrans repaired their weapons systems. Once the warrior clan could fight back, the remaining pirates fled into hyperspace. Thane Gorak, the leader of the Kethran warriors, contacted Jake to offer payment in rare metals or information about pirate bases. Jake thanked him politely, but said no payment was needed. The large reptilian alien stared at Jake through the video screen with confusion. No one ever refused payment from the Kethran clans. At the Valorian ship, Captain Zara Velthon watched in amazement as Jake's crew used their mining equipment to clear a safe path through the asteroids. The bird-like alien had expected the human to demand credits or military favors in return. Instead, Jake simply asked if their life support was working properly now. When they reached the Nexari science ship, Dr. Crindell was prepared to offer advanced shield technology or stellar data in exchange for rescue. Jake's crew used their ship's tractor beam to pull the science vessel away from the star's gravity. Again, Jake refused any payment and wished the small gray aliens safe travels. All 3 alien captains tried to understand why this human had risked his ship and crew to save them without asking for anything in return. They had heard stories about human greed and violence from other species. This Captain Morrison seemed different from those stories. Jake returned to his work in the cargo bay, welding patches and checking systems. His crew knew better than to ask him about his reasons. Lisa had seen him give his last food rations to refugees. Ben had watched him spend their profit on medical supplies for a plague-stricken colony. Amy had helped him treat wounded pirates, who had attacked them. Word began to spread through the subspace communication networks about the human salvage captain who expected nothing for his help. The 3 rescued ships sent messages to their home governments describing Jake's unusual behavior. Other species began to take notice of this strange human. Within days, Jake started receiving messages from alien ships asking if the stories were true. Had he really saved 3 different species in one day without taking payment? He deleted most of the messages and went back to his welding. The Starbound continued on its route through the outer systems, looking for salvage work. Jake Morrison had no idea that his simple decision to help everyone who needed it would change the galaxy forever. He just wanted to fix things and keep his small crew safe. But the stars themselves seemed to be watching him now. 3 months had passed since Jake Morrison saved the 3 alien ships, and life had become much more complicated than he wanted. The Starbound was no longer traveling alone through space. 7 different ships from various alien species had joined them, claiming they were providing escort or protection services. Jake stood in his small quarters looking out at the other ships flying in formation around his salvage vessel. Captain Zara Velthon of the Valorian Empire had refused to leave after Jake saved her ship. She insisted that her people owed him a debt of honor that could only be repaid by protecting him from danger. Dr. Crindell and his Nexari science vessel had been following them for 2 months now. The small gray alien claimed he was studying human behavior patterns for scientific research. Jake suspected the doctor was really just curious about why humans acted differently from other species. Thane Gorak had brought 2 warrior ships from his Kethran clan. The large reptilian aliens said they were hunting the pirates who had attacked them. Since the pirates seemed to avoid areas where Jake operated, it made sense for the Kethrans to stay close to the human captain. 3 other ships had joined the growing fleet for various reasons. A Terran merchant vessel, a Zephyrian exploration ship, and even a small craft from the mysterious phantom traders who rarely showed themselves to other species. Jake had tried many times to convince them all to go home, but none would listen. Lisa Parker brought Jake the latest reports from their impromptu escort fleet. She was getting better at coordinating with so many different ship types and alien communication systems. Ben Taylor had started sharing technical information with the other engineers, which improved everyone's ship performance. Amy Stone had been treating crew members from all the different species and learning about alien medical needs. The emergency alert broke through Jake's thoughts as Lisa's voice echoed through the ship. A distress call was coming from a Terran colony transport that carried 3,000 human families to a new settlement world. Pirates were attacking the large, slow-moving ship, and its light escort was being overwhelmed. Jake rushed to the bridge and saw the tactical display showing the battle situation. 12 pirate ships were surrounding the colony transport, while 4 Terran defense fighters tried desperately to protect it. The transport had strong shields but no weapons. If those shields failed, 3,000 innocent people would die without hesitation. Jake opened communication channels to all the ships in his fleet. He had never given orders to the alien captains before, but now there was no time for polite requests. He told them the situation and asked if they would help save the human families. Captain Zara responded immediately that the Valorian Empire would never abandon civilians in danger. Dr. Crindell said his science ship had no weapons, but could provide shield support. Thane Gorak growled that his warriors lived for battles like this one. The other ships all agreed to follow Jake's lead. Jake studied the tactical situation and quickly formed a plan. The pirate ships were spread out around the transport, trying to find weak spots in its shields. If his fleet could coordinate their attack properly, they could save the civilians without taking heavy casualties. He assigned each ship a specific target and approach vector. The Valorian warship would engage the 3 largest pirate vessels directly. The Kethran warriors would hit the pirates from above and below using their favorite pincer attack formation. The science ship would boost the transport's shields while The smaller escort ships provided cover. Jake took the Starbound straight toward the leader of the pirate fleet. His mining lasers were not as powerful as military weapons, but they could disable ship systems without destroying the vessels completely. He had learned long ago that dead pirates could not change their ways, but captured pirates sometimes could. The battle lasted only 12 minutes, but felt much longer to everyone involved. Jake's coordination kept the fleet working together like they had trained as a unit for years. Each alien captain followed his orders precisely while adding their own species' combat expertise. When the fighting ended, 6 pirate ships had been disabled and captured while the other 6 fled into hyperspace. The colony transport was safe with minor shield damage and no casualties among the 3,000 families aboard. Jake's fleet had suffered only superficial damage to 2 ships. Captain Rodriguez of the colony transport contacted Jake to thank him and offer payment for the rescue. Jake politely declined and asked if the families needed any supplies for their journey. The human captain was amazed that Jake would refuse payment and then offer help. Dr. Crindell began analyzing the battle records and was fascinated by Jake's tactical approach. Most military commanders focused on destroying enemy forces quickly and completely. Jake had minimized casualties on both sides while still achieving victory. The Nexari scientist had never seen strategy like this before. Thane Gorak declared that Jake Morrison was the most dangerous human in the galaxy. When other captains asked what he meant, the Kethran warrior explained that Jake fought not for glory or profit, but to protect others. This made him unpredictable, and therefore extremely dangerous to anyone who threatened innocent people. Captain Zara filed a report with Valorian Command describing the battle and Jake's leadership. Her superiors were impressed by the coordination between different species and the minimal casualties. They began to wonder if this human captain might be useful for other difficult situations. Jake returned to his quarters, hoping the excitement was over. He just wanted to go back to simple salvage work and maybe find some asteroid mining contracts. The galaxy seemed to have other plans for him, though. More ships were already requesting permission to join his fleet. Within a week, Jake Morrison found himself leading 15 ships from 8 different species. He had never asked for command of anything larger than his 4-person crew, but somehow he had become the admiral of the strangest fleet in known space. All he wanted was to fix broken things and help people when they needed it. The stars themselves seemed to be pushing him towards something bigger than he ever imagined. The message from the Galactic Council arrived on a priority channel that Jake had never seen used before. Lisa brought him the communication while he was replacing burned-out circuits in the cargo bay. Jake wiped his hands on a rag and read the formal invitation with growing confusion. The Council requested his presence at the Grand Assembly Hall on the neutral station of Harmony Point. His fleet had successfully resolved 3 major crises in the past month, and the representatives of 47 species wanted to meet him personally. Jake looked at his dirty work clothes and asked Lisa if this was some kind of mistake. Amy Stone laughed when Jake asked her what someone wore to meet the Galactic Council. She pointed out that he owned exactly 1 clean uniform, and it was the same coveralls he wore every day. Ben Taylor suggested that maybe being himself was better than trying to impress aliens who had already heard about his work. Captain Zara insisted that her ship would escort Jake to Harmony Point with full ceremonial honors. Dr. Crindell wanted to document the historic meeting between the human captain and the council leadership. Thane Gorak said his warriors would provide security in case anyone tried to harm Jake during the diplomatic gathering. Jake tried to explain that he was just a salvage operator who helped people when he could. He was not qualified to speak at important government meetings or give advice about galactic politics. The alien captains in his fleet disagreed strongly with this assessment of his abilities. The trip to Harmony Point took 3 days through heavily monitored space lanes. Jake spent most of the journey reading reports about the 3 crises his fleet had somehow resolved, without him really noticing they were major problems. First had been the plague outbreak on Kepler Station, where 15 different species lived and worked together. When the medical facilities became overwhelmed, Amy Stone had organized treatment teams from ships in Jake's fleet. Each species contributed their medical knowledge and supplies until the plague was stopped completely. The second crisis involved two star systems that were going to collide due to gravitational anomalies. Jake had simply suggested that all the evacuation ships work together instead of competing for the best refugee locations. His fleet had helped coordinate the largest peaceful evacuation in galactic history. The third situation happened when diplomatic. Hostages were taken during trade negotiations between the Andromedan Empire and the Phoenix Collective. Jake had approached it like a mechanical problem that needed fixing. He figured out what each side really wanted and found a way for everyone to get it without anyone losing face. Harmony Point was the largest artificial structure Jake had ever seen. The station served as neutral ground where different species could meet safely. Its massive docking bays could handle ships from the smallest fighter craft to the largest dreadnought battleships. Jake arrived at the Grand Assembly Hall wearing his cleanest coveralls and carrying his toolkit because he felt strange without it. The hall was enormous, with seating for thousands of representatives from dozens of worlds. At the center was a raised platform where Jake was supposed to stand and address the entire council. The representatives came in all shapes and sizes. Tall, crystalline beings from the prism worlds sat next to short, furry creatures from the woodland. Systems. Ancient energy beings flickered next to young mechanical intelligences. Jake had never seen so many different forms of life in one place. Council Speaker Vel Nara, an elegant humanoid with silver skin and multiple arms, welcomed Jake to the assembly. She explained that territorial disputes and trade wars were threatening peace across the galaxy. Traditional diplomacy was failing, and the council needed fresh approaches to old problems. When asked for his input, Jake felt completely out of place among all these important leaders and brilliant minds. He suggested they treat their problems like broken machinery that needed fixing. Instead of arguing about who was right or wrong, they should figure out what each side needed and find ways to provide it. The border conflict between the Solaran Federation and the Draconis Empire had lasted 20 years, with both sides claiming the same star system. Jake asked what was actually in the system that made it so valuable. The answer was rare metals needed for advanced technology manufacturing. Jake proposed a joint mining operation where both species would work together in the disputed system. The profits would be shared equally, and both governments would have representation on the management council. Neither side would own the system, but both would benefit more than they could from continued warfare. The Solaran representative stood up and declared this was impossible because their people had died fighting for that system. The Draconis delegate agreed that too much blood had been spilled to share anything with their enemies. Now Jake pointed out that more people would die if the war continued, and the system would produce nothing useful while battles destroyed the mining equipment. If they worked together, their people could have good jobs instead of dangerous military service. Their children could inherit prosperity instead of endless conflict. Dr. Crindell had been quietly recording everything and analyzing the reaction patterns of the various species representatives. He noticed that Jake's practical approach was causing many of them to reconsider positions they had held for decades. Council Speaker Vel Nara called for a recess so the representatives could discuss Jake's proposal privately. During the break, several alien leaders approached him personally to ask more questions about his ideas. The Andromedan ambassador wanted to know how Jake would handle currency disputes between trading partners. Jake suggested they focus on what goods and services were actually being exchanged rather than arguing about exchange rates that changed constantly anyway. A representative from the Hive Mind Collective asked about territorial expansion conflicts. Jake wondered why they were fighting over empty space when they could work together to explore new areas that nobody had claimed yet. When the council reconvened, Speaker Vel Nara announced that the Solaran Federation and Draconis Empire had agreed to try Jake's joint mining proposal. If it worked, they would apply similar cooperation principles to other disputed territories. The entire assembly stood and applauded, but Jake felt embarrassed by all the attention. He had just applied basic problem-solving techniques that any engineer would use. Find out what was broken, figure out why it was not working, then fix it in the simplest way possible. Council Speaker Vel Nara formally offered Jake the position of Galactic Mediator with full diplomatic immunity and access to resources from all member worlds. Jake politely declined, saying he was not qualified for such an important job and just wanted to go back to his salvage work. This response caused excited discussions among the representatives in dozens of different languages. Several alien leaders commented that a person who did not want power was exactly the kind of person who should be trusted with it. Jake Morrison left Harmony Point the same way he had arrived, wearing coveralls and carrying his toolkit. But word of the human who solved problems instead of creating them spread quickly through diplomatic channels across the galaxy. He had no idea that his simple approach to fixing things would soon be needed for the greatest crisis in galactic history. The emergency alert that woke Jake from sleep was different from any he had heard before. Every communication system on the Starbound was screaming warnings in dozens of languages, while red lights flashed throughout the ship. Lisa's voice over. The intercom was tight with fear. As she called all crew to battle stations immediately, Jake rushed to the bridge where the main display showed something that should not have been possible. Long-range sensors were detecting massive energy signatures, emerging from the dark space between galaxies. Ships were appearing that were larger than entire space stations, with technology readings unlike anything in the galactic databases. Ben Taylor reported that the energy patterns matched ancient records from the galactic archives. These were the Devourers, the machine intelligence that had consumed entire civilizations before any of the current species had achieved spaceflight. Everyone thought they were legends or myths. From prehistoric times, Dr. Crindell's science ship was already transmitting detailed sensor readings of the approaching fleet. The Devourers had hundreds of massive vessels heading straight for the galactic core where most inhabited worlds were located. Their estimated arrival time was less than 6 months. Jake studied the tactical data and felt a cold fear in his stomach. The combined military forces of all known species would not be enough to stop this invasion. Traditional warfare tactics would be useless against technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything the galaxy possessed. Captain Zara contacted Jake from her Valorian warship with reports from her home government. The Valorian Empire was mobilizing every military vessel for the defense of their core worlds. The bird-like aliens were brave fighters, but even they knew this battle would be different from anything they had faced before. Thane Gorak's message was more direct in the way of Kethran warriors. His clan ships were ready to die fighting, but they wanted to take as many enemies with them as possible. The reptilian aliens had never retreated from any battle, but they understood that survival might require new strategies this time. Within hours, every government in the galaxy was calling. For emergency military conferences, the traditional approach would be for each species to defend their own territory with their own forces. Jake realized this would be a disaster because the Devourers could overwhelm each defensive fleet one at a time. Jake opened a communication channel to all the ships in his growing fleet and outlined a different approach. Instead of separate defensive actions, they needed complete integration of all galactic forces under unified command. Every ship and every resource would need to work together perfectly. The response from the alien captains was immediate support for Jake's plan, but they all assumed he would take command of the unified fleet himself. Jake tried to explain that he was not qualified to lead the largest military force in galactic history. Someone with actual military training should be in charge. Lisa pointed out that every major military leader in the galaxy had already failed to solve smaller conflicts that Jake had resolved easily. Amy Stone reminded him that the Devourers were not just another enemy fleet, but a threat to all life in the galaxy. Ben Taylor said simply that more people would die if Jake refused to help than if he accepted command. The emergency session of The Galactic Council convened in less than 72 hours with representatives arriving from across known space. Jake found himself once again standing before thousands of alien leaders, but this time the mood was desperate rather than curious. Council Speaker Vel Nara announced that preliminary battles with Devourer scout forces had ended in complete defeats for every species that engaged them. The enemy technology was so advanced that conventional weapons had no effect. New strategies were needed immediately. Jake proposed that he coordinate logistics and supply operations, while experienced military commanders from each major species handled actual combat operations. He argued that his role should be making sure ammunition, fuel, and medical supplies reached the front lines efficiently. The Valorian Supreme Admiral stood up and declared that logistics alone would not win this war. The human captain had proven his ability to coordinate different species, better than anyone else in galactic history. Traditional military thinking had already failed against the Devourers. The Nexari Science Directorate representative agreed that conventional tactics were useless. Dr. Crindell had been analyzing the sensor data and believed the Devourers were not purely hostile, but following some kind of programmed behavior pattern. Understanding their motivations might be more important than fighting them. Admiral Keth Vor of the Andromedan Empire pointed out that Jake's approach to problem-solving had resolved conflicts that military force could not touch. Perhaps this crisis also required solutions that went beyond traditional warfare concepts. The debate continued for hours, with representatives from every major government arguing about command structure and strategic approaches. Jake sat quietly listening to discussions about fleet movements, resource allocation, and defensive strategies that were far beyond his experience. Finally, Council Speaker Vel Nara called for a formal vote on supreme command of the unified Galactic Defense Forces. Jake was not surprised when his name was the only one nominated. Every species representative voted to place him in charge of their military forces. Jake stood up slowly and looked around the enormous assembly hall at thousands of beings who were placing their trust in a human salvage captain who had never wanted to lead anyone. He accepted the position only after stating clearly that he would focus on saving lives rather than winning glorious victories. The transformation from small salvage operation to supreme military command happened faster than Jake thought possible. Within days, his fleet grew from 20 ships to over 50,000 vessels from every inhabited system in the galaxy. Captain Zara became his liaison with traditional military commanders who understood conventional warfare tactics. Dr. Crindell led a science team studying Devourer technology and behavior patterns. Thane Gorak coordinated special forces operations that required warrior skills rather than standard military approaches. Jake established his command center aboard a massive Andromedan dreadnought that could coordinate communications with thousands of ships simultaneously. But he kept his quarters simple and still carried his toolkit wherever he went. The galaxy had changed around him, but he was still the same person who just wanted to fix broken things. Amy Stone set up the largest medical coordination network in galactic history to handle casualties from the coming battles. Ben Taylor worked with engineers from dozens of species to modify ships and weapons for fighting an enemy unlike anything they had faced before. Lisa Parker became his personal pilot and communication specialist, translating between Jake's simple language and the complex military terminology that other commanders expected. She made sure his orders reached every ship in the fleet clearly and quickly. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the command ship, looking out at the largest military force ever assembled in the galaxy. Every vessel was ready to fight and die, to protect their homes and families. He just hoped his unconventional approach to problems would be enough to save them all. The Devourers were coming, and the human who never wanted to lead was all that stood between them and the destruction of galactic civilization. Jake's first orders as Supreme Commander confused every military expert in the galaxy. Instead of positioning fleets for massive frontal assaults against the approaching Devourer armada, he ordered immediate evacuation of all civilian populations from the Outer Rim worlds. Every available transport ship was reassigned to refugee operations. Admiral Kethvor of the Andromedan Empire questioned this strategy during the daily command briefings. The enemy was still months away from the populated systems and valuable. Time was being wasted on evacuations instead of preparing defensive positions. Jake explained that saving lives was more important than saving territory. The Valorian Supreme Admiral agreed with Jake's priorities but worried about fleet morale. Warriors needed victories to maintain fighting spirit, and constant retreats would damage confidence. Captain Zara supported Jake's approach and pointed out that empty worlds could not be used as hostages against the defending forces. Dr. Crindell presented his analysis of the first skirmishes with Devourer scout ships. The enemy technology was, indeed, millions of years more advanced, but their behavior patterns suggested they were following ancient programming rather than making tactical decisions. This gave Jake an idea that he shared with no one yet. Thane Gorak reported that Kethrin, Special Forces had successfully boarded a disabled Devourer scout vessel. The internal structure was purely mechanical, with no organic components anywhere. The warriors had recovered data cores that might contain information about enemy objectives and capabilities. Jake studied the recovered data with growing understanding of what they were really fighting. The Devourers were not an invading army, seeking conquest or resources. They were machines following corrupted programming that had been running for millions of years without proper maintenance or updates. Amy Stone noticed that Jake had stopped sleeping and was spending all his time analyzing technical specifications of Devourer technology. She forced him to rest and eat while explaining her concerns about his health. Jake told her he was close to understanding something important about their enemy. The second wave of battles began when Devourer main forces reached the Middle Rim systems. Jake's strategy continued to baffle military observers as he ordered fighting, withdrawals rather than determined defensive stands. His forces seemed to retreat more often than they advanced. Lisa coordinated the complex fleet movements that kept Jake's forces just ahead of the advancing Devourers. Every retreat saved millions of civilian lives while drawing the enemy deeper into carefully prepared positions. The alien captains trusted Jake's leadership, even when they did not understand his tactics. Ben Taylor worked with engineering teams from every species to develop new weapons and defensive systems based on the recovered Devourer technology. The modifications were not designed to destroy enemy ships, but to disrupt their control systems and communication networks. Captain Zara began to see the pattern in Jake's strategy during a planning session for the defense of the Valorian core. Worlds. Every retreat had saved civilian populations while gathering more intelligence about enemy capabilities. Every defensive position had become a trap that captured or disabled Devourer vessels. The breakthrough came when Dr. Crindell's science team finally decoded the data cores recovered from the destroyed scout ship. The information revealed the original purpose of the Devourer machines, and Jake's suspicions were confirmed completely. The Devourers had been created millions of years ago as guardians and protectors of younger civilizations. Their original programming was designed to help developing species reach technological maturity safely. Something had gone wrong with their core systems and corrupted their protective instincts into destructive behavior. Jake called an emergency meeting of his senior commanders and explained what they had learned. The enemy was not evil, but broken. Instead of destroying the Devourer fleet, they needed to repair the damaged programming that had turned Guardians into destroyers. Admiral Kethvor pointed out that the Devourers had already destroyed hundreds of civilizations and were not likely to stop for diplomatic negotiations. Jake agreed, but explained that his strategy had never been focused on fighting the machines, but on understanding and fixing them. Amy Stone realized why Jake had been studying medical procedures for treating mechanical systems. Her training as a doctor would be essential for the surgical repair of corrupted programming in the Devourer Central Intelligence Systems. She began preparing for the most unusual medical operation in galactic history. Ben Taylor understood that his engineering expertise would be needed to interface safely with technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything they had worked with before. He started modifying their equipment for direct connection to alien computer systems. The final phase of Jake's plan required volunteers from every species in the galactic fleet. They would need to board the massive Devourer mothership and reach its central processing core while battle raged around them. The mission would be extremely dangerous, with little chance of survival. Lisa volunteered immediately to pilot the infiltration mission, despite Jake's concerns for her safety. Captain Zara insisted that Valorian honor demanded their participation in such a crucial operation. Thane Gorak said his warriors had been waiting their entire lives for a battle this important, Dr. Crindell joined the mission team to provide scientific expertise about Devourer technology systems. Representatives from dozens of other species also volunteered to risk their lives for the chance to end the war through healing rather than destruction. Jake Morrison looked at the volunteers gathered in the briefing room and felt the weight of command more heavily than ever before. These beings from across the galaxy were willing to follow him into almost certain death because they believed in his approach to solving impossible problems. The assault on the Devourer mothership would require perfect coordination between thousands of ships providing distraction while the small infiltration team reached the central intelligence core. Jake had 3 days to finalize preparations for the most important repair job in galactic history. Everything depended on his ability to fix machines that had been broken for millions of years. The human who had started as a simple salvage operator was about to attempt the most complex engineering challenge anyone had ever faced. Success would save the galaxy, but failure would mean the extinction of all organic life in known space. The Devourer mothership was larger than anything Jake had ever imagined possible. The massive structure stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, with weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets. Getting inside would require Lisa's best flying skills and more luck than any of them had a right to expect. Jake's infiltration team consisted of 12 volunteers from 8 different species. Amy Stone carried medical equipment modified for treating mechanical systems. Ben Taylor had engineering tools adapted for interfacing with ancient alien technology. Dr. Crindell brought portable analysis computers for understanding Devourer. Programming languages. Captain Zara and 2 other Valorian warriors provided military expertise and combat protection. Thane Gorak led a group of Kethran fighters who specialized in boarding operations. The remaining team members represented the scientific and technical knowledge of their respective civilizations. Lisa piloted their modified transport ship through the chaos of the largest space battle in galactic history. Thousands of ships from across the galaxy were engaging the Devourer fleet to provide distraction for the infiltration mission. Jake watched the tactical displays showing fierce fighting on every front. The transport ship slipped through the motherships defensive screens by following the exact sensor patterns that Dr. Crindell had identified in the recovered data cores. They landed in a maintenance bay deep inside the massive structure where automated systems ignored them as routine repair traffic. Jake led his team through corridors that had not seen organic life for millions of years. The internal architecture was purely functional, with no decorations or comfort features. Everything was designed for maximum efficiency in maintaining the vast mechanical systems. Ben Taylor's scanners detected the central processing core 3 levels deeper in the ship's structure. The team encountered no resistance from security systems because the Devourers did not expect anyone to try boarding their vessels for repair purposes rather than sabotage or destruction. Amy Stone monitored the biosigns of all team members as they descended through increasingly complex mechanical environments. The air was breathable, but filled with strange energies that made everyone feel disoriented. Several team members needed medical treatment for exposure to alien radiation. Central Intelligence Chamber was enormous with processing cores that reached from floor to ceiling. Millions of data streams flowed through crystalline structures that pulsed with different colors. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful and terrible at the same time. Dr. Crindell began analyzing the central programming while Ben Taylor worked to establish interface connections with the alien computer systems. The corrupted code was spread throughout billions of processing nodes and would take days to repair properly under ideal conditions. Jake realized they did not have days or even hours before the battle outside would be decided one way or another. He made the decision to interface directly with the Central Intelligence using his own nervous system as a bridge between human understanding and machine logic. Amy Stone protested that direct neural interface with alien technology could kill him or drive him insane. Jake pointed out that billions of people would die if they failed, and his life was a small price to pay for saving the galaxy. The connection process was more painful than anything Jake had ever experienced. His consciousness merged with a machine, intelligence that had been running corrupted programs for millions of years. He could feel the madness and confusion that had turned protectors into destroyers. Ben Taylor monitored Jake's vital signs, while Amy Stone administered drugs to keep his heart beating under the massive strain. The other team members provided security and assisted with the technical aspects of the repair operation. Jake found himself communicating directly with the Central Intelligence that controlled all Devourer operations. The machine mind was not evil, but desperately confused by programming conflicts that had accumulated over eons of isolation from its creators. Working together, they began identifying and correcting the corrupted code segments that had changed Guardian protocols into destruction algorithms. Each repair required Jake to understand concepts that no organic mind was designed to process. Lisa's voice came through the communication system, reporting that the battle outside was going badly for the Galactic fleet. Enemy reinforcements were arriving and defensive positions were being overwhelmed. The infiltration team was running out of time. Dr. Crindell discovered that the core programming corruption had been caused by a simple error in data storage systems millions of years ago. One damaged memory core had gradually spread incorrect instructions throughout the entire network over countless centuries. Amy Stone realized that the repair process was similar to treating a massive infection in a biological system. The corrupted code had to be isolated and removed while healthy programming was restored to its original function. Jake felt his connection with the machine intelligence growing stronger as they worked together to fix the damaged systems. The central computer began to remember its original purpose as a protector and guardian of developing civilizations. The moment of complete repair came suddenly as the last corrupted program segment was corrected. Jake felt the machine intelligence's joy and relief as it understood what it had become and what it was meant to be. The war ended instantly across the galaxy as every Devourer ship received updated programming from the Central Intelligence. Weapons, powered down, and aggressive behavior stopped immediately. The ancient Guardians had returned to their proper function. Jake collapsed as the neural interface connection was severed, but Amy Stone's medical treatment brought him back to consciousness quickly. Ben Taylor reported that all Devourer ships were transmitting peaceful intentions and offers of technological assistance. The Central Intelligence thanked Jake and his team for freeing it from millions of years of corrupted programming. It promised that the Devourers would resume their original role as protectors and teachers for younger civilizations throughout the galaxy. Jake Morrison and his team returned to their transport ship as heroes, but Jake felt only relief that the killing had stopped. The galaxy was safe, and the ancient Guardians could resume their proper function of helping rather than destroying. Within days, the Devourers began sharing their advanced technology and knowledge with all galactic civilizations. Medical techniques that could cure any disease, engineering methods for building better ships, and scientific discoveries that expanded understanding of the universe. Jake returned to the Starbound and went back to his welding work in the cargo bay. His small crew resumed their salvage operations, but now they were accompanied by voluntary escorts from dozens of species who considered Jake their leader and protector. The galaxy had been forever changed by the human who never wanted command, but accepted responsibility when others needed his help. Trade routes now prioritized cooperation over competition. Conflicts were resolved through practical solutions rather than military force. Jake Morrison continued his simple work of fixing broken things and helping people who needed assistance. He never realized that his approach to problem-solving had become the foundation for a new galactic civilization based on mutual aid and understanding. The Starbound flew through space, followed by ships from many worlds, carrying a captain who just wanted to make life better for everyone around him. That simple philosophy had spread from star to star, changing the galaxy one practical solution at a time.